Hi, everyone. My name is Haley,
And this is Laura.
and welcome to the Body Pod. Dr. Courtney Conley, we're so excited to have you here. This has been, we've been counting down for this. So we've had these questions for a long time, and we're just stoked that it's finally time to hear from you. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
So, Courtney, as we were just saying offline, we're both in Colorado, which I feel like is the greatest state in the United States. We'll
Yes.
see. We'll see if everyone else says that, but I love it. I was just mentioning I wish I could come into your clinic because this is fascinating. And I was actually introduced to you a couple of years from a mentor of mine who actually lives in Sydney. And he was like, Haley, why haven't you? Well, first of all, her company is Gait Happens and your Haley Happens. What's going on here? It's like, I got to meet this lady. I got to meet this lady. So, what sparked your passion? I'm always curious about people that work with the feet or that are just interested in the feet. How did you come to that?
Yeah, it's really I think it's really interesting because people think, oh, she's into feet. It's kind of weird. I mean, I like to say I have a healthy obsession with the foot. Healthy. Um, I have always been fascinated by human movement, and it's been kind of a passion of mine since I was very young. I was a ballet dancer, and then I was a triathlete, and my biggest Achilles heel, if you will, had always been foot pain. I had, bunions and neuromas and everything kind of under the sun. And so I think with anything that you become passionate about, it becomes this personal quest of how can I help myself, because I had to stay moving.
Yeah.
I knew that surgeries and that going down that route was not going to be the way. So that's kind of what got me interested in all of this. I went to school and we really didn't get what I was looking for. It was more of treating the foot very differently than we treat the rest of the human body. So, for example, it was if someone's foot hurts, here's a foot orthosis. And if it hurts worse, here's surgery. But we don't have those conversations with other parts of the body, say your low back. The first go to isn't, well, wear this brace. And then if it doesn't work, go get surgery. It's how can we make you stronger? How can we make you more resilient as a human being? And that's what I really wanted to do from a foot perspective.
Okay, I love that because the only the only people I've ever had to block on Instagram are people that are obsessed with the feet. And
Well,
I'm always
if
I'm
you
always
saw the
looking at
messages that we get, you might that count might be higher.
I don't understand. I don't understand it. I understand what you just said about the foot and being interested in it, but that's a whole other topic. I just think it's funny because I'm like, where do these people come? Where do they come from? Where do they come from? But
Well, it's
anyhow,
actually, if you were to look at the homunculus, which is like the mapping of the brain,
yeah.
the foot area and the genitalia area are right next to
Is
each other.
that why people have these sexual foot fetishes?
So they can, it's a very close real estate in the brain. So when people say they have a foot fetish, there is some science behind some of that.
Okay. I am like, wow,
Laura's blown away. She's like, we're done. That's enough. That's all I need to hear today.
I could be making a lot of money if I didn't block these fools, if I wanted to share my feet, but I'm like, this is funny. Okay, so I have so many questions, and what we really want to focus on today is obviously midlife women. So that's our whole
Mhm.
demographic. And from the strength, if we start from the strength world, because this has been something that I've seen from the get-go in strength training is this again, my mentor was really big into training the foot stabilizers and working out barefoot or in socks or a minimalist shoe so that when I see women in this 35, 40 plus and older age range, the lack of ankle mobility and the weak soleus muscle, it's always the soleus and the anterior tip. It's these two exercises that nobody ever wants to do, amongst others, but from women wearing high heels. Most women coming in are like, everyone's worn high heels, and it's really messed them up. So I see that in like the back squat, where there's just no movement at all. But if I put them in, say, like a hack squat or a pendulum, like they can get all the way down into that. So why is that for, women and men? Is it more common in women? Does it creep up in midlife?
I think I'm turning 50 next year. So I'm kind of right in this kind of,
Yes.
yes. And I do feel better now than I did, well better now than I did in my 30s. And I truly attribute a lot of that to the strength training that I have done so much more recently, but also getting stronger from the ground up.
Yeah.
The foundation that you build yourself on, it's like building a house on sand if your foot and
Mm,
ankle are weak. You can't create significant power.
yeah.
You're unstable on your foot, and therefore the amount of loads that you can actually lift decrease. So I think it's very, very important. You bring up a lot of good points there, especially when we look at the gym, like strength training in the gym. I see people all the time, and I have to keep my mouth shut because it's hard. But if I was going to do a back squat with 200 pounds, would it make sense to do that on a strong, stable platform or on a pillow?
Yeah.
It's not a trick question, right? So if I'm on a highly cushioned shoe, for example,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to lift something heavy, it's going to make it more difficult for
When
me.
you say it that way,
So
it's
that,
like a no-brainer. It's like, why are we?
yes. And, people will be like, well, I can't, I work in an environment where I'm standing on concrete. There's a different shoe for each task. We're talking about strength training here. So when I'm carrying heavy loads or I'm trying to lift or push something heavy, your foot has to feel. That's what's so beautiful about the foot. I'm going to introduce Eddie. This
Yes.
is
We love
Eddie.
Eddie.
Okay.
Eddie, hi.
Um, there's thousands of receptors on the bottoms of our feet, and they
Mhm.
basically give us information on how we should be moving. How stable are we? Where is our balance? Where is our center of pressure? So when we start interfering with that by putting a bunch of cushion underneath the foot, you're really making it harder on yourself, and you're really changing the loads that are going through the rest of the system. I really think it's a no-brainer conversation. And if we want to start with anything, put your foot on the ground when you're in the gym.
So you're a big fan of no shoes then?
So
Yes.
no
No
socks
shoes.
and no
And
shoes, or just no shoes?
It depends on what kind of gym you
Yeah.
work in, but
yeah.
if you can't take your shoes off, having a minimal shoe, and the research is kind of iffy on that. So I always say if you can get something below like 14 millimeters, which is thin and
Okay.
flexible,
Mhm.
you're gonna have better sensory acuity. But the footwear is going in the wrong direction because everything is going thicker and more cushion and more toe spring. And, you know, that's not what you want to be lifting heavy weights in.
No. So when somebody comes into you and you're checking this for whatever, maybe they whatever they're presenting their issue with, can you tell right away if someone has been wearing like high heels for a good majority of, or is it pretty much any shoe, not just a high heel?
I mean, I think the most beautiful thing about the foot is it's the only place in the human body where you can look at it and see aberrant load. So, in other words, if I wanted to see if my knee was going through abnormal loads, I'd have to take an x ray, right? Or an
Yeah.
MRI. But all you have to do is look down at your foot. The widest part of your foot, from an anatomical perspective, should be your toes. So if you were to look down at your foot, the toes should carry the width, not the ball of the foot, the actual toes. So when you look down at your foot, most people's feet look like a shoe.
Yeah.
My patients come in and their toes are the most narrow part of their foot. It
Oh,
almost looks like they've shoved their foot into a high heel for years. So you can immediately tell. And when women, especially, form things like bunions or hammer toes, it's not just a conversation of aesthetics. We know from a research perspective that when you have abnormalities or forefoot deformities, like a bunion or a hammer toe, it affects things like balance and increases your risk of falls. So those are the conversations that I think we need to be having, not just, my foot doesn't look good. It's you're going to have an issue with from a longevity perspective if your balance sucks and you're going to increase your risk of falls. That's not what we want to do.
So our toe separators, that's one of the main things that they are helping achieve, is to get that the widest part.
It brings the toes into alignment so that you can start to engage the foot better. I am a big fan of them. They've helped me tremendously. I wear them all day long. The only time I don't wear them is when I'm sleeping. But you have to be careful that you're wearing them in the right type of footwear if you're not like wearing them at home barefoot, because 95% of the footwear out there um, has the width in the wrong part of the
Yeah.
shoe. So
yeah.
even wide shoes are very different than wide toe box shoes. Wide shoes are here. A wide toe box extends into the width of the toes. And I know there's a lot of, women listening to this. I'm not saying you have to throw your shoes away. I'm just saying think about it from a, 24-hour shoe clock. If you're going out to dinner or you're going and you want to wear your heels, great.
Yeah.
But for the beginning of the day or when you get home, put on a pair of toe spacers, walk around barefoot, put on a shoe that allows your foot to splay a little bit. You just can't be in restrictive footwear that's compromising the function of the foot all day long.
Yeah. So if they're coming in and this is an issue and what are the muscles that are really being, because I know that you're big on the soleus too, and that's so hard because I feel like there's not more gyms. I always put these into my programs, the seated calf raise for that reason. It's
Yay.
really hard to mimic if you don't have a seated calf raise machine, but they're just not as available as the standing calf raise at most gyms. Most gyms have that if they have one of the two, but the seated, you know, it's just not as used, or it's empty when you go to a gym. I never have to fight
I'm
for it.
like, this should be the longest line in the gym should be behind the seated calf raise machine.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Wait, wait, no.
Okay,
Tell
so
us
if you're
why.
looking at that,
Tell us
Go
why.
ahead. When you think of propulsion or power, which, as we age, we know we have sarcopenia, so we lose strength, but we actually lose power faster than we lose
mm,
strength. And I think that's a problem. I think we're getting the strength training conversation out there. I'm not
oh
so
yeah,
sure we're getting the power conversation out there, which is different types of training. It's training with speed, it's training with, and a lot of that speed and power comes from below the knee.
yeah,
So it's being able to produce this power. And that's why I think training the soleus, training the foot is so
And
very
doing a
important.
seated calf raise almost like makes it like it's a more focused exercise.
Yes, it takes, when you drop the knee or flex the knee greater than 60 degrees, you can really target the soleus. And there's some research out there that would say, well, you're still getting hypertrophy doing a standing leg calf raise into both tissues, which you are. But in a seated calf raise, you can actually go into a deficit there and you can really lengthen the soleus. And I think that's important. I think calf variability. So standing, seated, whatever you can do. Sometimes my patients that can't do a single leg calf raise, we'll start them on their backs doing a calf raise up against the wall, which is incredibly difficult actually. So there's always ways to modify. I never say can't. It's how can we modify this so that you can start to load these tissues
Okay.
appropriately?
okay. So tissue loading, because that is Um, I feel like I'm preaching from the rooftops all the time because with the heavy loading conversation, same thing with the foot. It's like, okay, I hear this, now I'm going to go do it. And those tissues are going to be the first thing that start chatting, if you're jumping and some of these power programs, if you haven't done the preliminary drills
Yeah.
that can be seen as really, not as fun, a little bit more boring. But where does how long would you say if somebody came in and they had this, what you see every day, and the feet that look like a shoe is still on it, and you start there, what is like the basic treatment that you would do that someone could do? Because I'm trying to foresee the questions of, great, Haley, now we have to strength train, we have to do cardio, we have to do mobility work, and now you're adding on, toe
Yeah,
stuff,
full
foot
foot
stuff
regimen.
to it. Well, what would
Oh,
like the
yeah.
top three be? The top three exercises be if somebody was just at home and they're not going to go in and see someone, but they want to work on some of these.
Yeah, I've thought about this quite a bit because, as women, like perimenopausal women, it's like we have one more thing now.
Yeah.
Now we have to strengthen my big toe, is what you're telling me. I'm like,
Yes.
yes. Um, if you look at, there's really cool research looking at if someone wore a minimal shoe, which is a thin and flexible sole. It's a zero drop. So the heel and the toe sit on the same plane. And basically, it's anatomically shaped. If someone wore that shoe for 6 months, you can increase the strength of your foot greater than 50%.
Wow.
So I tell my patients, if you do nothing but just wear the right footwear as much as you can, you're moving in the right direction. And then if you wanted to add in a couple things, the toes have to be able to splay. So that's like number one. So you either wear a toe spacer, you do things like, when I'm at my desk right now, I'm like lifting all of my toes, I'm spreading them, I'm reaching them forward. You have to have that foot awareness first. But then, just like you said, any type of propulsion, like a calf raise, when the heel comes off the ground, that's when the intrinsic muscles of the foot come to the party. So if you wanted to increase loads, sled pushes, any type of calf raise, I mean, the foot can push. So we need to let it do that. So it depends on where you are in that spectrum. If your foot's really weak, you work on just toe splay and things like that. But if you're in the gym and you're already loading your foot, load it.
Okay, so then we have balancing to go along with that, and we have, if we focus on what you said earlier of fall prevention,
Mhm.
because that's the number one fear of a lot of women over, I would say, over 60. In 40s and 50s, you're still kind of like, oh yeah, I see that, but that's so far away. In reality, it might not be so far away, but if we look at fall prevention, then we obviously have to have some muscle to help there. Where does the foot come in to play with that?
When we think about what prevents us from falling, there's a lot of factors. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm a foot person. So I'm always like thinking about the relationship between fall risk and foot in the foot. When we turn 50, all those receptors I was talking about on the bottoms of the feet,
Yeah.
when you turn 50, you lose sensitivity to those receptors. So in other words, it takes 25% more pressure to stimulate these receptors in your feet. So you lose sensitivity. When you turn 80, it takes 75%
Whoa.
more. So the sensitivity of our feet goes down, and it goes down rapidly the older we get. So we can't feel things.
Yeah.
And you couple that with sarcopenia. Sarcopenia happens in the foot too. You lose muscle strength. So now you can't feel, and now you don't have strength. So if you were to stand up keeping your feet on the ground and lean forward. What you should feel is your toes pressing into the floor to help give you feedback. Hey, don't go that way. You better step back a little bit. So if you don't have the strength in your toes and you certainly can't feel them, where do you think you're going to go?
Yeah.
You're going to fall. And then our solution is, well, my foot hurts. So I'm going to go, let me go put a shoe on that's going to make me feel less. It makes absolute zero sense to me.
So is there anything you can
So
do to help decrease the risk or decrease the receptors losing?
it's a great question. The one thing we know of that increases sensory nerve fiber branching is exercise. So just like we would exercise our glutes, we can exercise our feet. So when we do exercises for our feet, whether that's balancing, whether that's toe exercises, calf raises, all those things count. You're increasing circulation, you're increasing nerve fiber branching, which helps with sensation and strength. I think it's a very important conversation because it doesn't take much. Most people don't think about their foot like they think about, strengthening their hips.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, the stronger your foot gets, the stronger you'll be able to load your hip.
I mean, that information you just shared with us, the statistics, I mean, if you told women those statistics, I think that'd be way more apt to wanting, like making those exercises important. I'm like, I can't miss.
The feet. So what role does estrogen play? Does that play a role in the receptors of losing those as we, lose estrogen?
I mean, the majority of the people that I treat are women of our age. And you do start to see changes globally in the system.
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting when we talk about hormonal changes and what happens with our pelvis and our pelvic mechanics, there is a direct correlation between your pelvis and your feet.
Yeah.
Especially when there was a really cool study that looked at strength of the big toe, so flexor hallucis longus.
Mm-hmm.
And there was synergistic muscle activity of the pelvic floor. Those two guys work together.
What?
And so, yes.
Wow. Did not know that.
So when I see bilateral symptoms or women going through perimenopause and you start to see these hormonal changes, shame on me if I'm not addressing what's happening at their pelvis and what's happening at their feet, because it all goes together. And I think we all know this, that our response when our, nervous systems go into, fight or flight, high stress, when we get tense, you can feel like, the pelvis contract. Right? Gone are the days of telling women to like do a bunch of Kegels, right? It's like, relax, try to relax your pelvic floor. When you see someone in that high stress state, you will also see it at their feet because their feet look like they're these high arch, stiff kind of, and it's like, I'm telling my patients all day long, chill. Let your pelvis relax. Let your pelvic floor musculature relax. Let your foot relax because there is a massive connection with all of that.
So do you have an opinion? And I know this is there's a lot of different ways it could go, but about hormone therapy. Does this help with anything that you see specifically, or is it really just individual? Maybe not.
I think it's I think with everything, it's context dependent and individual specific. I will say personally, it was a game changer for me when I started going down that road of like exploring my hormones, and it all, there's this big umbrella of wellness, right? So we have hormones and strength and mental and emotional health. And I think the conversation of you know, our health from the ground up should be included in all of that. And
Mhm.
so I can only speak from my personal experience and what I've seen with my patients that yes, when we balance all of that, and that includes hormone replacement, I have seen better results across the board. People
Yeah.
feel better.
Yeah. So with the exercises that you said, if we do the toe spacers, we have toe yoga, we have some of these, the seated calf raise, any kind of calf raise, anterior tib. I mean, I feel like that usually gets lost too. That's a forgotten one. But if we look at this, like how many times a week, I know from mobility, just in general mobility, spine, hip, whatever, that it really takes even the ankle, that you can't just do it once a week
Yeah.
and for a few minutes and then be like, I'm good. I checked that off. I did it once a week. Does it have to be, is it better multiple days, every day, maybe 5 minutes? What would that look like?
I think if you were doing like a daily foot routine, it's a couple minutes a day. You know, if you were if you were walking barefoot around your house, now I think the conversation is important that there's transition.
Hmm.
You know, during COVID, for example, there were a lot of articles that came out that walking around barefoot at home is very bad because people were getting heel pain and they were getting all these symptoms. And I'm like, the, they're explaining it incorrectly.
Yeah.
It's not that walking around barefoot is bad, it's that people have really weak feet. And then they chose to walk around barefoot all the time. Most of us have weak feet because of the footwear that we've been in and the fact that we don't pay attention to them.
Yeah.
So things like walking around barefoot are great. If you have weak feet, you start small. It's like 5-10 minutes a day. Get your foot on the ground. If you're used to that, then like I said, you can be in the gym. And I usually tell my patients about 2 to 3 times a week, I want some type of calf work done. Add it into your leg day.
Hmm.
You know, soleus is slower twitch fibers. We can train that guy a little bit more. So we can do that more consistently. So I like about 2 to 3 times a week from a loading the lower from the knee down. And
And
then
what a,
daily, you're like walking around barefoot. You can wear toe spacers, just, you know, moving your toes around.
what about the short foot muscles, like the grabbing the if with the arch, grabbing the dish towel or something like that, or the
The
ball under the
balls.
foot, just to kind of, what would you do
Um,
there?
the picking up marbles concept and like, you know, squeezing a towel, I usually tell my patients not to do that.
Okay.
Um, and here's why. If you think of the walking gait cycle, when you're walking, our toes don't do this, or they shouldn't. They shouldn't be gripping the ground. You're rolling the earth away when you're walking. So it's an eccentric strength. It's a lengthening of the foot. Typically, people that have weak feet, they're very good at curling their toes because that's how they're trying to
Mhm.
stabilize themselves. So when I give people a short foot exercise, right, engaging the arch, or if they were doing this, it's like they were just in a boot, they just had surgery. It's a very initial foot rehabilitation phase, if you will. But you got to move away from things that aren't functional, and those things aren't functional.
Okay, so there was a PT in Boulder. I won't say the name. You may have known it when you were there. Every person that goes in gets a orthotic. Every person, like any person I've ever known that's ever gone to him, orthotic. I've heard you mention that that should not be a lifelong
Correct.
fix. Why?
My favorite question is, well, doesn't my arch need support? Does anywhere else in your body need support all the time? No.
No.
And in fact, this foot was designed to handle many times our body weight. When we're walking, 2, 3 times our body weight going through this foot. When you're running, there's parts of the foot that take on 11 times your body weight. It was designed to handle many, many times our body weight in loads and forces. Therefore, when you have a strong foot, it should be able to do those things. The problem is that if I take my foot and do this to it, so let's say I'm in a narrow toe box shoe, for example, I've now changed the structure of my foot. So it's not, you don't have toe splay. You don't have force distribution across the forefoot. So feet will get weaker. And then the solution is, well, here's a foot orthotic. I'm not anti-foot orthosis by any means. There is a time and a place when you want to modify load. So for example, if I have someone with acute heel pain, acute plantar fasciitis, fine. Put a foot orthosis under there. Let's deload things, get things to settle down a little bit. But then there's an exit strategy because we're not going to deload your foot forever. It doesn't make any sense. So it's wear this foot orthosis for X amount of time. But while you're doing that, we're going to have the and conversation, which is you're going to be wearing this and you're going to be strengthening your foot and you're going to be loading your hips and you're going to be getting stronger so that we can remove the foot orthosis. Because if not, you keep wearing those things and you will see weakness.
What if someone's been wearing them for 20 years without strengthening their foot? What's the exit strategy?
Slow.
What is it? Slow?
Slow.
It's very, very slow. Because the other thing that happens too is that I think these devices bring some type of, you know,
Comfort.
like a comfort, a safety. They're like, you're telling me I can actually get out of my bed and put my foot on the ground? And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm telling you. But you're going to do it for like 5 minutes and that's it. And then you build their system and you also build their confidence and their safety, because you could give a patient the best exercise on the planet, but if they don't feel safe doing it or they don't trust the process, it's game over.
So I'm just assuming this is the case for other people listening. So I'm going to ask the question, but I have been wearing orthotics just in my workout shoes for running because I used to run marathons, and it helped some sort of pain in the beginning, and my arch would get some pain in there. So now when you're saying all of this, part of it, I'm thinking, okay, I can't get out of it when I'm doing it the wrong way, because I would just try to go cold turkey and just not have an orthotic in there. And then my arches would be killing my foot, my ankles. So for anyone else listening that's been wearing them for years, you just can't go cold turkey. And there's nothing wrong with my foot. It's just, it doesn't have the strength it needs. Is that what your guess would be?
That's what, if you were a patient of mine and you said this to me, which I hear all the time, we're not going to go 0 to 100. So I would ask you, what are the things you like to do? So if you said to me, I like to strength train, then I'm going to say, when you go into the gym, I want 5 to 10 minutes, take the shoes off. You're going to start doing a couple exercises with your foot on the ground. If you were a walker and you said, I wear this foot orthosis all the time when I'm walking, I would say the same thing. Take out the orthotic, you're going to get a different pair of shoes, and you're going to go walk for 5 to 10 minutes, and you're going to see how your foot feels that night and the next morning. And then as things start, which they always do, they're like, yeah, it wasn't that bad. Then it's add a little bit more time. Add a little bit more time. And eventually what my patients say to me, and they always do, yeah, this does feel better. You're right. I didn't need this. You're right. I feel more stable. It's just getting over that initial kind of, this has been my safety net for so long. I can't tell you how many patients I have pulled off of their foot orthoses with plantar heel pain because they've been in orthotics for 20 years. And I'm not saying they didn't need it initially, but you cannot deload tissue for long periods of time without expecting some type of consequence.
Courtney, you're going to change my life right now. This is so exciting.
I know, it's life changing. So really to to bring it round circle here, it is no different than loading muscles for tissue tolerance, for clearing up tendinopathies anywhere else in the body. You would start slow with, an acute phase and then go into loading tissue at the amount that you can handle and building from there. No difference.
100%. I love that. Like, you wouldn't tell someone who's never squatted before to go squat 200 pounds.
Oh,
It's
but people are trying it.
That's a good point.
And so it's, muscle hypertrophy. Strength takes weeks, months. That's what I will tell people right in the beginning. I'm like, this is not going to happen overnight.
No.
You got to put the time in. And I'm talking 3 months, 6 months, a year. But if you put the work in, and it doesn't have to be a lot, it's like, just wear this footwear a little bit. Just start letting your foot feel the ground. The results that you will have on the long end, because I see it from my younger patients to my older patients, when they can put their foot on the ground, the benefits that you get from that outweigh so much. It is, I want to like scream it from the mountaintops how important this stuff is.
So this is like, again, to bring it back to the strength training of what I see, it's so often that, no one, you're right, no one's looking at the foot, and it's like, oh, this is a hip problem. And I'm like, but is it? Is it a knee problem truly? Or is the knee just sandwiched in there because the foot collapses and the hip's not strong enough? So then it's all this like breakdown of the whole kinetic chain, down or up, of what that looks like. But for someone like, I've had clients with hallux valgus and hallux rigidus. But the valgus, like the toe in there, I don't even know how you can balance, but these clients will live in orthotics and just, I'm like, well, if we never build up the foot, you're never getting there.
If you look at hallux valgus, so bunion, there's like so much to talk about here. It's why I started this, because I had a bunion. It was very painful. But if I have my big toe that's straight, it helps stabilize the arch of my foot.
Yeah.
So even if I were to, if I can't splay it actively, and I were to put a toe spacer in here, for example, it's going to align the foot better so that I can push off. Now, if I don't do that and I do this, when I go to push off, I have an instability in the foot. So that's when people are like, well, I have to have this orthotic there.
Yeah.
But if the foot can splay and propel off this position wide and strong, then even with bunions that are flexible, a lot of the times I'll see people come in and the bunions will be rigid. So in other words, it'll start to go under the second toe and it's stiff. You can't move it. That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
So that's why early intervention with this stuff is so important. And, here's one of my favorite things I hear. Well, my mom has a bunion and my grandma has a bunion. So they're hereditary. I don't care what camp you live in. If you think that they're hereditary or you think that you don't, my question is always, think about it from another perspective. If your mom had heart disease, it's the first thing they ask you when they go to the doctor, right? What's your family history? And you say, well, my mom has heart disease. And the first thing they tell you is, pay attention to your diet, exercise, take preventative measures because you have a genetic predisposition. It doesn't mean you have to have it. You just have a predisposition. If you have a predisposition to getting a bunion, then do something about it.
Yeah. Take
preventative action, right? Wear the right footwear, wear a toe spacer, get strong, strengthen your foot.
Okay. Now I feel like I have to, I hiked Mont Blanc this year. So I did that in 9 days, and I went to REI and I got these shoes and I was like, these are the ugliest shoes in the world, but they were so wide. Like my toes it took me a while to get used to, because there felt like there was so much space, But at the end of that, and I was so mad. I was like, I look like a platypus foot. Like it's
That's what
this
my
big
daughter calls them.
and
She's like, "You don't wear
flat.
these platypus shoes."
Yeah, I was like, I'm never wearing these shoes outside of this hike when nobody can see me. But now I feel like the lady sold me the right shoe.
I tell my daughter, smart is sexy. Smart and strong is sexy. So when you see women that they are aware of what their foot is doing, that to me is sexy because they know they're going to age well. They're going to be able to walk and strength train and move. And that to me is sexy. And I get it. Like we have a battle. My biggest battle is the function over fashion conversation
Or I cannot even
Oh,
imagine.
because it is, I split my time between here in New York City and Colorado. It's an easier
Oh,
conversation
I'm
to
sure.
have in Colorado.
oh yeah.
And I'm
Yep.
like, and these women will come in and they're like, I'm not going to give up my heel. And I'm like,
Why are you here?
right.
Why
And
are you here?
eventually they do. I have a lot of, 50 and 60-year-old women. And what I hear all the time, I wish I didn't wear the heels as much as I did when I was younger. Because when we're in our 20s and 30s, we're like, this
Yeah.
is fine.
Who
But
cares?
you'd
Yeah.
have more time on this planet, you will start to see changes in that foot. And then I will tell you, when you have foot pain, it is the one diagnosis in the entire human body that will literally stop you in your tracks. You can walk with low back pain, you can walk
Yeah.
with shoulder pain. You will not walk or move when your foot hurts. And that's when people are like, panic.
Yeah.
They're like, oh no, what am I going to do? And it's like, we have to have these conversations before the panic sets in.
So you do some work with for the ankle mobility of really trying to work with that tissue, but that tissue too. I mean, I would say by far more women than not. I would even say, dare I say, 90% that come in. Most women that I see just in their 50s just can't squat well. But again, they can if they're like holding on to TRX straps and they can offload it. But it's that like there's just no move of that forward, the knee can't drive forward over the toes. But then we've also been taught that knees shouldn't travel over the toes. So there's that whole conversation.
Yeah. Which
But
drive I'm like, sit in a chair, walk down a step. Your knee goes over your foot.
yeah.
There's very few, if any, movement patterns that I will tell people, no, don't do that. We want movement variability. Train all the ranges, and ankle mobility is so important. It's, when you're walking, for example, it should be this beautiful, like people should be able to walk forever. The foot's a rocker. It's literally like, your heel hits the ground, your ankle comes over your foot, and you roll through your toes. And it's this kind of beautiful, efficient motion. People walk like it's like a Frankenstein gait. They're like picking up their foot and dropping it down because they don't have control over their ankle mobility. And that's weakness. That's poor footwear. I mean, wearing even an athletic shoe that has an 8 millimeter heel to toe drop, which is most running shoes, a lot of running shoes out there, it's not the functional position for the foot. But it sure feels good when you put it on because it makes things easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, nobody gets a free lunch. So you want to wear these shoes that help propel you forward and feel all nice and easy. I would certainly challenge the conversation that too easy is not good.
Okay, so for women, again, and these midlife women, we know, and maybe this is because of the foot. I'm curious, but we know that plantar fasciitis kind of kicks up in this perimenopausal space. Is that only because of the foot, or do you feel like the loss of estrogen? I mean, there's like the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause that we have, information on now, and there's all of these other like, what could it be? But that is definitely, it's like rotator cuff is one of them. Plantar fasciitis. Do you see it as much in men as women, or is it pretty similar?
That's a good question. I would love to like do research on the etiology of plantar fasciitis. Like where does it we know that there's a correlation between foot weakness,
Mm-hmm.
so having certain muscles in the foot that get weak. They share loads with the plantar fascia. So if the foot is weak, it can be a predictor of having plantar fascial pain. Um, Increased BMI. So increased weight puts more pressure on the foot. We know that that can be a factor. But I would argue, I think that a lot of this comes from above the foot. I think a lot of it is what the hips are doing, what the pelvis is doing, the control that we have when the foot hits the ground. So I do see it in both men and women. I always take note of when people say they have it on both sides. So if someone will have heel pain on one side, I kind of put my more biomechanical hat on and say, have they sprained their ankle? Is there weakness? Have they had an, ACL tear? And I go kind of that direction. But if they tell me that they've had heel pain on both sides, you don't have the same injuries on both sides. So you have to start thinking elsewhere. Is this more systemic? Is it hormonal? Did they have 4 kids and they were living in a position of changes in their pelvic mechanics that increases loads into their feet? Is it more of a nervous system fight or flight response? But when I see symptoms on both sides, I start thinking much bigger picture.
So interesting.
So what do you do for someone with like rigidus? Is that something that you can cure, or you just have to work around it?
So there's kind of different phases of that diagnosis. So the big toe should be able to extend, 65 degrees, a little, some sources would say more. In a walking gait cycle, you need about 40 to 45 degrees. And it's important.
Yeah.
Because that's push off. So if you start cheating the system here, so you start to have decreased range of motion here, you're going to still be able to walk forward. You're just going to find another joint to steal it from. So hallux limitus is when you start to see decreases in ranges. There's a diagnosis called functional hallux limitus, which if you start strengthening certain muscles of the foot, like peroneus longus, for example, that's the guy on this side, right, that stabilizes the big toe, you can really start to stabilize that joint. But if you continue to not use this joint, you will start to creep into hallux rigidus diagnosis, which is this thing's not moving, 5 to 10 degrees. You have arthritis on the top of the joint. It's literally a joint block. And those conversations that I have with my patients are very different because you cannot force range out of a joint that you're not going to get it from. So now we have shoes that have rockers on them. But, I always like to be very hopeful with people when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
Because I see panic all the time. And I think education calms panic.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people know, we can start to think about this. Okay, so even if you have a diagnosis of hallux rigidus and you can't bend your toe, you still have an ankle, you still got a knee, and we still have a hip that we can pay attention to. If I can't roll through my big toe, people's gait starts looking like this. They start picking up their foot. So now they start to lose range of motion at the ankle. So we start working heavy on ankle mobility, for example. I'll pay attention to hip extension. So I just pay very close attention to the joints we still have access to because we just lost one of our friends.
Yeah.
We didn't lose the rest of the kinetic chain. So there's always ways, but those are the conversations that need to be had. Is just because this has happened, have hope, because if we do the right things, we can still, keep you going here.
So for the shoes, you mentioned like do you have names of shoes, or is that like a no that you can't say the names of some that
No,
are, I mean, everyone will be like, well, what shoe do I wear now? If I have to wear a shoe and I can't go, in socks in the gym, which I actually got in trouble for at a Marriott once. I was like,
yeah.
who's looking at the hotel? There's two people in here. Why are you using the security cameras to zoom in if I have shoes on? But anyhow, what would the shoes be?
Yeah. So, that's such a great question. Of every podcast I ever do, that's always like the number one topic. What shoes should I wear? In my book, I've defined kind of two different types of footwear. So we have functional footwear and we have minimal
Okay.
footwear. All minimal footwear is functional. All functional footwear is not minimal. So I'll define the two for you. Functional footwear allows your foot to be in its functional position. So wide toe box is my non-negotiable. So companies like Ultra Running, they're one of my favorites. Topo Athletic, Notice, those guys live in the functional shoe kind of conversation because they still have a low to zero drop, 6 millimeters or below. And if you look at research, that's where they'll say functional footwear lives, 6 millimeters or below. But they'll still have some pretty decent cushion on them. So for people who are new to this conversation, I always say, start over here. Get yourself in a wide toe box shoe. If you have poor ankle mobility, put yourself in a 4 millimeter drop. Match the cushion that you have on your shoe and start wearing this shoe. As your foot gets stronger, now we have the conversation of spending time in minimal footwear, which is wide toe box, zero drop, in very thin and flexible sole. If you are wearing minimal footwear, this is a hard environment for your foot and ankle. You have to work a lot harder. The muscles are working harder. You have to have better range of motion. Will you get stronger in minimal footwear? Yes. If you jump the gun and go, I'm going to wear this minimal footwear 100% of the time and I have weak feet, will you run into problems? Probably.
Okay, so Topo Designs, that was the shoe. That was my shoe that I wore
on your hike.
Yeah.
So that one gets, and then Ultra is that Stuart McMillan's company? Or is he one of them?
Golden Harper and Brian Beckstead started Ultra.
Ultra. Okay.
And they're some of my favorites for my patients because I see people that have had foot pain, their feet are not very strong. So, we have a shoe spectrum. So I'll say when you're going on your longer walks, you're going to wear this Ultra, for example, that has a wide toe box, maybe a 4 millimeter drop so that they can still keep their cardiovascular. I still want them moving.
Yeah.
And then I'll say, here's a minimal shoe like Vivo Barefoot, for example, okay, or Zero. And I'll say, wear this shoe for like 5 to 10 minutes a day. And so then we can kind of play along the spectrum. But you don't have to be 100% in minimal shoes all the time. And you certainly don't want to be 100% in, traditional footwear all the time. You have to dance. You have to know when to wear what.
Yeah. Okay. So if we were to create, or you were to create, which you have the little toe box.
Yeah.
The toe box that has, so let's talk about what's in there. And then what do you do every day? If someone doesn't have any outstanding issues that they know of, I'm just curious, what does your routine look like?
One of the reasons we designed that foot health kit was because I know it's another thing. It's like we have one more thing we have to do. So I wanted it to be easy for people. So toe spacers are a huge thing. I wear those every single day, all day long. They're in my slippers right now. It's just an easy thing you can do, like around your house. There's toe strengtheners. So the reason I designed those, my daughter was a rock climber when she was younger, and she was up in her room one day and she had the rubber bands around her fingers and she was like sitting there while she was reading, doing her and I was like, man, there needs to be one of those for the foot. So That's all I did. I just designed one for the foot. So when you're sitting at your desk, you can wear them around your toes and you just sit there and spread your toes. You're engaging the muscles of your foot. Easy. There's a ball in there. Remember all those receptors. You just want to wake them up. You're not trying to, dig into the heel. Don't do that if you have heel pain, by the way. My patients do that. They're like, it hurts right here. So they'll take the ball and try to stay on the meaty part of the foot because there's a bunch of nerves there.
Okay.
But you can sit there and roll your foot. A band, you can do banded toe exercises. So I'll be sitting here on a Zoom call. I have a 4-hour Zoom call tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to do. It's
Rough.
giving me anxiety. I'm like, who schedules these things? But I'll sit there on that call and I will be exercising my big toe on that call. Those are all little things that you can do that I do daily. And then I'm in the gym 2 to 3 times a week, strength training. My shoes are off. When I do things like deadlifts, I'm always loading, I'm loading my midfoot. I'm pushing through the ground. I'm doing some type of calf work. And then plyo. You got to train the spring of the foot. And I think we forget that power piece. I think that's important. But, for those listeners who are already in the gym, just add in a little bit of this stuff. It will go so far.
Well, and like you said at the very beginning of this podcast, just changing your shoe and doing that for, what did you say, 6 months will change your foot 50%?
Yes. You can increase your foot strength. It's like a no-brainer to me. It really is. And it takes time. And I tell my patients, you're going to have days like these, good and bad days. But as long as that trajectory keeps going up, there is nothing more powerful and or sexy when your foot hits the ground and you have strength and power, because your feet will literally carry you well into your later decades. But if you do not have that power from the ground up, you just pick a diagnosis.
Oh, I'm starting today.
Yes.
Well, me too. I'm ordering the foot box as soon as I get off this. I'm getting the foot box. I think it'll be a great giveaway for my current group. I need some giveaways, so I'll be purchasing some. So, okay, in closing, Courtney, where can people buy any of your products, the foot box, anything, and where do they find you?
Gait happens, GAIT. So that is our kind of platform. So that's on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. We have a lot of free resources, by the way. On YouTube, we have exercises, we've talked about the pelvic floor, exercises on the relationship between pelvic floor and the feet. Our entire Instagram account are exercises and ways to help people. On our website, we have kind of 2 platforms. So for the layperson who just wants to get their feet stronger, there's 12-week programs for you. There's foot health kits. And then for people that are more movement professionals, they want to work with their clients, there's other resources to get certified in gait assessment and things like that. But, I wanted it to be easy and accessible. And I wanted people to, have fun with this stuff. It really is a part of our bodies that is so often overlooked, and it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, Laura and I are both recommitting.
I'm not kidding. I feel like you're making my life.
We're going to do it on our next podcast. That's going to be our mission, that we're doing it while we're on our next podcast.
I look forward to seeing that.
Thank you so much, Courtney, for your time and your education, and we're totally vibing with your personality. You are really fun to interview and to have on. So thank you for your time.
Thank you both so much.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and sharing the Body Pod with your friends.